Hello viewers, I'd like to tell you about another channel that hooked me immediately. World of Antiquity by Professor David Miano. I like all things cultured and eclectic, and his channel covers subjects which some historians wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Interesting, hairy, valid subjects which follow my rule, ask the most difficult question you can think of. And the reason they're hairy is because lost ancient civilizations, pseudo-historical figures, and anything that is missing from the archaeological record is set apart from mainstream archaeology for no reason, just the circumstance of arbitrary discoveries which could easily have been other discoveries. And which position a historian takes on those is set apart for no reason, except that it challenges certain mediocrities. Let's say those mediocrities are: archaeology news has been dominated by discoveries made from our own files. The mantra, "it's all about our method," lowers the expectations of ambitious students. And mainstream archaeology usually doesn't address its critics. For the past 20 years, I've been disappointed in astronomy because I recognized its advancement has stalled compared to where it should be. I did not know there would be congressional hearings this year saying we had inside information all this time. I only knew astronomers talk like magicians do, focusing on the mystery of the cosmos, which is using what you don't know as your basis, wowing people with rhetoric when you don't have the info. Presenters saying if it wasn't for the adversity of such impossible distances, we wouldn't know as much and therefore we're grateful for it. Things a civilization wouldn't bother with if we had inside information. The advancement of every science, from physics to medicine, has plateaued in our lifetime, corresponding with an intellectual backpedaling of society, where people don't even know where things stand. We've gone back to talking about Albert Einstein as a form of hero worship, instead of making the breakthroughs he would make, a prelude to our knowledge going down, which is the reason channels like Professor Miano's are needed and why I have to join forces with them. Therefore, Dr. Miano is relatively forward-thinking and trendy, addressing one's opposition as opposed to saying there is no war, engaging them directly so there's no disconnect, a trend that moves away from 21st century science is golden and eventually leads to omnipotence. If you were to compare today's archaeology to the way things really are, revealed by a single invention that scans the earth for every discovery wherever they exist, on that day, it will be revealed that today's archaeology is not a very good science, much like economics isn't a good science. To coin a phrase, it has more dirt on it than any other science. A vast number of experts are not just mistaken, their methods were wrong, turning the page on a medieval period of ignorance. I was on the executive staff of an archaeological foundation that was closed to the public. An unexcavated site is being destroyed as we speak to put in a swimming pool. The famous Sutton Hoo excavations took place because the wealthy landowner was a fan of history, making them vassals exactly like the people they were excavating. In the words of the Red Baron, how do we know our cause is better than theirs? It's not even different from theirs. So the proper mantra for an archaeologist is, we'll never know 100% about the past. Not statements like, would you trust a doctor without a PhD? Which means only accredited researchers have the answers. That is not a fact. And there are more fundamental arguments and agreements than these, such as the lab is scientific, preferential statements are not, including statements made in the name of science. In the UAP hearings, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, a very skeptical person, said there is no credible evidence for extraterrestrial activity, and I quote, "That is how science works. When the concept of extraterrestrial life is not unscientific in any way." I was shocked by the narrow-mindedness of this statement. That point of view is not science, and the opposing view unscience. We are capable of having more advanced discussions than this. Here is an example of what those discussions might be. Here's what I call the dragon bones argument. Let's say there's an unconfirmed rumor that some dragon bones were discovered in the excavation of Carthage behind the defensive wall. And two archaeologists react to this news differently. One archaeologist says, "Will absurdity never cease? Mark my words, it will turn out to be a hoax." And the other archaeologist thinks, "I did my dissertation on St. George and the Dragon being a religious allegory. Could I have been that wrong?" And let's say the rumor does turn out to be false. The first archaeologist says, "See, I was right. There's no problem." But the second archaeologist has realized through deductive reasoning how easily his life's work could be dead wrong at any moment. An institution should not be afraid of anything that depends on everyone to be in agreement for their house to stand. It just raises too many questions. Professor Miano has a video entitled "Pseudo-Archaeology, What is it?", in which he makes several controvertible statements. The notion that accredited institutions are right, amateurs and individuals are mistaken, implies a scientist is only someone who goes to bat for science. A person's place in the world doesn't predetermine who they are. A well-spoken role model or teacher may appear to say incontrovertible things, when in fact it's the strength of their rhetoric. They just haven't met someone who is more gifted. I'm an anti-academic, and I can argue any academic into the ground on account that many academicians aren't very bright. They don't even see my arguments coming. So here are some classic counter-arguments that my viewers should know in case you run into an expert who only promotes their own brand, which they are very likely to do. Number one, the scientific method is golden. No, it is not. Centuries from now, people will not be looking back at our time as a renaissance. It is a time of political and scientific turmoil. Look at how we ourselves look down our noses at the past so that we can feel superior. The reason for promoting science so strongly is the political climate we're living in right now. Accredited institutions are not more likely to make discoveries than lesser institutions and individuals. Accreditation is a custom. Facts don't care who discovers them. The answer to the question, would you trust a doctor without a PhD, is there's a better system than the one we're using now, where everyone in the room is well informed. As you get older, professionals seem to be less and less informed. I'm at the age now where when I go to a veterinarian, I know more than he does. The question, how did you arrive at your conclusions, is not as smart a question as it seems. If humans were to represent Earth at a Creationists someday, that's a neologism, a spontaneous word for something there is no word for. We'd be saying, "How is it you all are speaking English?" and pocketing things from the buffet table instead of participating in anything that matters. The question greatly underestimates how primitive a system we are using. In conclusion, pseudoscience is heavily outmatched by popular science. It would break the average person's brain to know that if things had gone differently, astrology could have replaced today's astronomy. It's something that seems illogical, but nevertheless is true. The Egyptian pharaoh Narmer, founder of the first dynasty, was unknown to history until his name was found in certain inscriptions. Now, the oral tradition of the Maori people of New Zealand says that when they first settled that country, there was a civilization of white people living there, something that is not recognized by historians. But to me, a relic memory preserved by a people is more likely to be true than carved pictograms. And people have to look somewhere, so pseudo-archaeology found a hole and filled it. Professor Miano also gives a very good argument, I believe is all his own. It goes something like, if you're on the wrong side but you do good work, then you are on the right side. In which case, we need people within those countercultures. It's a good argument. I have nothing bad to say about it. I'm thinking about reviewing the magazine Acts and Facts. Would you like to do it together? It's a difficult subject to critique fairly. You have to walk a very straight line of objectivity most scholars aren't capable of. Thanks for watching.